what I remember very, very vividly was, it looked like she kind of just floated across the floor. It was crazy, still stays with me to this day.
Keith Urban's latest words weren't an apology. They were a hymn of hard-won grace. At 57, sitting alone in a Nashville studio bathed in gold light, he finally spoke of love. Not the kind that sells records, but the kind that shatters you. And then slowly, painstakingly, rebuilds you until the need for a forever illusion is gone. For decades, he was country music's golden boy. Blue eyes, leather boots, a voice that made heartache sound beautiful. The dreamer who conquered America and married Nicole Kidman, Hollywood's porcelain queen. They were destiny. 2 stars across continents, both marked by fame, both searching for quiet. Fame, however, turns love into theater. It takes the sacred and seals it under glass, demanding it breathe without oxygen. For nearly 2 decades, Keith and Nicole seemed inseparable, a miracle in a world that devours its idols. Yet beneath the red carpet smiles, there was always a tremor, an unseen cost. Every song he sang carried the weight of nights apart. Every roar of applause echoed a heartbeat that missed home. He would later confess that even in sold-out arenas, he felt trapped in a cage made of sound. Fame, he realized, wasn't freedom. It was just a louder kind of loneliness. When Keith finally opened up about his marriage, what spilled out wasn't scandal or betrayal. It was raw grace. I loved her more than I knew how to, he confessed. And sometimes love changes shape. It doesn't die. It just stops needing to prove itself. The world expected drama, something sensational. Instead, they got a man telling the truth about what it means to love in the long, exhausting shadow of perfection. His story, his rise, his demons, his devotion, his eventual breaking isn't just about one marriage. It's about a soul learning to stay open even after being shattered by the forces of celebrity. It's about the small-town boy from Caboolture who just wanted to play guitar only to learn that every chord of success comes with a note of sacrifice. Now at 57, Keith Urban isn't chasing applause anymore. He's chasing honesty. He's not singing to be adored. He's singing to be understood. As he strums his guitar in that quiet room, you hear the sound of a man who stopped performing for the world and started speaking to eternity. This isn't the story of a fall from grace. It's the story of a man who finally decided to live without pretending. And this is where the melody truly begins. A confession wrapped in music. A truth that took a lifetime to learn. Long before the spotlight, before Nashville, before stadiums screamed his name, there was a boy cross-legged on a rough Australian carpet, tracing the frets of a guitar with trembling fingers. The air smelled of eucalyptus. Outside, cicadas sang a tireless rhythm. Keith Lionel Urban, the son of Robert and Mary Ann, was learning that music was both an escape and a mirror. Born in Whanganger, New Zealand in 1967, but raised in the working-class town of Cobbler, his home pulsed with the heartbeat of American country. Glenn Campbell, Don Williams, Merle Haggard. These voices drifted through the thin walls like sermons for a restless child. He didn't just hear the songs, he saw them. The stories, the ache, the grit. They taught him that even ordinary lives could sound extraordinary if played right. At 6, he picked up a guitar. His father told him, if you want the world to listen, make it feel you. Heath practiced until his fingers blistered. When he couldn't afford new strings, he learned to make the broken ones sing. The family's tiny living room became his first stage. He wasn't dreaming of fame yet. He was dreaming of belonging, a place where the music inside him matched the world outside. School was harder. He was shy, awkward, often teased for his accent and his obsession with American cowboy music. While others played rugby, he memorized solos. Teachers called him distracted. Classmates called him strange. But the strings never judged. He once said, was the only language I didn't stutter in. By age 9, he was winning local talent shows, singing with a voice too soft for his size, but too honest to ignore. But even when he won, Heath replayed every mistake, determined to be better. That perfectionism, both his gift and his curse, began early. When he was 12, his father mortgaged their modest home for a top-quality guitar, a bold gesture of faith. Make it count, his father insisted. Heath never forgot. He spent hours watching Cadet Atkins videos, copying licks until his hands cramped. The instrument became a sanctuary. By 15, he was playing in local bars, the youngest musician in rooms thick with smoke, laughter, and regret. He was too young to drink, too old to be a simple dreamer. He played every night as if the universe itself were listening. You learn who you are on those nights, he later reflected. You learn whether you're doing this for love or applause. In those dark pubs, he found the first fragments of himself. The poet hidden inside the performer. He learned to make sadness beautiful, to turn silence into rhythm. Every chord was a rebellion against invisibility. He wasn't running from home. He was running toward the life he felt waiting. When the final school bell rang, Keith packed his guitar and a map covered in possibility. He left Cabular with nothing but faith that music could save him from disappearing. Nashville, the word sounded like prophecy, but when he arrived in 1992, the dream was gritty, hard, and humbling. He was 24, broke, and unknown. The streets were battlefields of hope. He slept in cheap apartments, recorded demos for others, and had to sell his instruments more than once for rent. But the music never ran out. He carried it inside him like oxygen. It's not ambition that keeps you alive, he observed. It's pure hunger. Heath's early years were a trial by fire. He formed the band The Ranch, playing smoky bars and county fairs. Crowds were small, indifferent. But Keith played every note as if he were already famous. The nights bled into each other, and exhaustion was often drowned in whiskey, a habit that felt harmless at first, then necessary. The loneliness of the road made the bottle his most loyal companion. Then, in 1999, the dam broke. His self-titled American debut, Keith Urban, hit the radio like a revelation. His voice was raw, tender, and electric. Songs like but for the grace of God, and were the black top ends became anthems for dreamers. The critics called him the new face of country. What they meant was, he sounded human again. Fame flickered at the edges, bringing awards and applause. But also an intense, terrifying pressure. The industry demanded perfection. He spent endless nights chasing the sound that made him famous. But when inspiration ran low, he turned back to the bottle. The same wild passion that made him magnetic on stage became destructive off it. Then came the night that changed everything. A charity event in Los Angeles, 2005. Nicole Kidman walked past elegance, wrapped in quiet sadness. He introduced himself with a shy grin. She smiled back with the kind of warmth that melts armor. She didn't see the fame, Keith would later say. She saw the man underneath. Their connection was instant, electric. Both had known the emptiness of applause. For the first time, Keith felt truly seen. He began to write differently. The songs gentler, more hopeful. Love became both muse and medicine. But the past doesn't vanish. As their romance deepened, his addiction shadowed him. By the time they married in 2006, Keith was holding a guitar in one hand and redemption in the other. Their wedding in Sydney felt like absolution. In the years that followed, his career soared with albums like Love, Pain, and The Whole Crazy Thing. His songs were no longer just hits. They were stories stitched from scars. On stage, he became unstoppable. The kind of performer who made every crowd feel like a congregation. But beneath the swagger were whispered prayers and the constant battle to stay steady. Nicole's career also soared. Yet in Nashville, she found peace, grounding them in family with their daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. But love under a microscope is never simple. Their schedules became tides. Their connection stretched thin. 4 months after their wedding, the headline struck. Keith Urban enters rehab. It wasn't a relapse of weakness, but a cry for help. Nicole didn't leave. She ran toward him, visiting quietly, refusing interviews. When asked why she stayed, she simply said, "Because love doesn't run." He emerged months later, sober, humbled, saved. "She saved my life," he said. "Not by fixing me, but by believing in me." His next albums were love letters. Proof that recovery and romance could coexist. They seemed invincible again. Anchored by an unspoken vow. We will not let the noise define us. They learned that love was not about eternal happiness, but about grace under pressure. "I don't want to be the man the world loves," Keith said. "I want to be the man she believes in." But even the strongest flame flickers in the wind of fame. As the years passed, a new silence began to settle between them. Not absence, but evolution. A softness that whispered, "What happens when the fairy tale grows older than the dream itself?" It didn't collapse in an instant. There was no shouting, no betrayal. It began the way most heartbreaks do, quietly, invisibly, like a slow tide pulling two shores apart. The distance wasn't just miles. It was silence. Nicole's filming. Keith's touring, the roar of strangers. Replacing the intimacy of conversation. They were kind, almost formal. They loved each other still, but the rhythm had changed. Love had become choreography. Friends noticed first. Heath spoke of his daughters in his music, rarely them. Nicole, always graceful, would say, "We're both very busy," code for something deeper. They never let bitterness touch their names. There was only respect, but the whispers came. Are they drifting apart? Marriage isn't a promise that time will never change you, Keith said. It's the hope that you'll keep changing together. But their changes weren't following the same rhythm. Heath found solace in stripped down acoustic sessions, songs of stillness and surrender. Nicole dove deeper into her craft. Both began to realize that love doesn't always die with thunder. Sometimes it simply exhales. The intensity that drew them together had mellowed into something gentler, more distant. They weren't enemies. They were simply evolving into separate selves. Keith, in his mid-50s, spoke more about acceptance than romance. You have two choices, he explained. You can fight to make it what it was, or you can love it enough to let it become what it needs to be. By 2023, the silence was impossible to ignore. Nicole, in a rare interview, was asked